Welcome back to Establish the Edge to discuss rookie wide receiver tiers pre-draft. And to do that, there is no better guest to bring on than my good friend, who actually just saw in Chicago last weekend, Sharp Football's Rich Hribar, Lord Reeves himself. How's it going, Rich?
It's good, man. You know, it's 70 degrees here now, and it's probably similar weather to you are because we're so close. But we could have used that last week at the Cubs game.
You know how the Midwest weather works. You have the spring of deception and then the 30-degree days. But now I believe we are in the clear and it's safe to be outdoors a little bit longer. But it is mid-April, basically, and we are coming closer to the NFL draft. A lot more things becoming clearer for us. I've talked to a lot of people on these shows the past few weeks now about this class of wide receivers overall, but I'm curious to know if you have any overarching thoughts on the players that we're going to be taking in rookie drafts this year.
Well, not just so much before we get into players, just kind of the state of the league, you know, kind of right now where these guys are coming into. We have now seen like a 3-year running sample now of wide receivers being less involved in NFL offenses. I mean, last season they had their lowest share of league-wide targets, receptions, receiving yards of the past 10 years. We're seeing more 2 tight end, 3 tight end sets. Running backs had a little bit of a bounce back. That's like just a very small bounce back. So eventually there's going to be a dead cat bounce. Like it can only go so far where running back targets are going to keep dropping. That'll happen with wide receivers too as well. But we are seeing more content sets. It's not like a class that features a lot of alpha targets like a Jamar Chase like level prospect. So I think it's going to be kind of an eye of the beholder class and what teams are looking for out of wide receiver archetypes. Like, what are they looking for? A vertical X? Are they looking for a slot receiver? Are they looking for one of these hybrid players? So we're going to get some kind of clarity coming out of the NFL draft and a larger vision for where your teams maybe see these guys. And also when you pair that up with the NFL draft, you look at the draft order and you relate this to fantasy football and dynasty. It's like the top of this draft class doesn't have a lot of like great desirable spots like you maybe in previous years, even to earn a lot of targets. I mean, you look at the top targets for like to be the wide receiver one, like for a rookie coming in, it's basically like the Titans and then the Browns and the Dolphins, right? Like are the spots that are kind of wide open. But teams like the Giants, the Jets, the Saints, the Ravens, they all have young wide receiver ones in place that could draft a wide receiver. And any of these guys, well, I believe have a hard time leapfrogging a Garrett Wilson, a Chris Olave, Zay Flowers, definitely Malik Neighbors. And you have to also question like, hey, these things are fluid in the NFL, but like these are all quarterbacks too that like, are you really buying, you know, secondary pieces attached to some of these quarterbacks? Are they good enough to support, you know, secondary and third pieces? So it's going to be interesting to see how gamers come out of this draft following the NFL draft and we kind of see where these guys land.
We'll dive more into it when season-long football comes around as well, but we're also talking about the landing spots, as you mentioned, with quarterbacks like Cam Ward, the combination of Deshaun Watson and Shadur Sanders, and the Dolphins' run-heavy offense with Malik Willis knocking the landing spots for these wide receivers as well. So although everyone's excited about the first-round players right now, like we are also talking about probably a developmental year and probably their production and opportunity also being lessened despite being first-round wide receivers, which, again, is why I'm tepid about the wide receivers in the first round overall as well.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see even if we have, you know, maybe upwards to 6 wide receivers in the first round, which I think will probably be lofty, but we kind of see like a group of 6 getting named and kind of flirting with first round capital. Mm-hmm. We know that at least 2 are locks, Lemon and Tate. Tyson, I believe, will still get there. And then you kind of have Boston, Concepcion, and Omar Cooper in the mix. But I do believe we'll see ADP wise from a redraft stance, these wide receivers all lower than we've seen in recent years where rookie receivers have been going.
With that being said, let's get into it. And I have brought the great JJ Zacharyson, Dwayne McFarland on the show to discuss how they're tiering these players. But now it's time to get your thoughts. And as I've talked with them, the first tier of rookie wide receivers, in our opinion, is some combination, however order you want to have them, of Mekhi Lemon, Jordan Tyson, and Carnell Tate, those guaranteed first-round guys, even though Tyson is now showing some character red flags that even Daniel Jeremiah has brought up on NFL Network. So let's start with your first tier of rookie wide receivers.
Yeah, and I still have those same three too. Maybe it is tight enough to maybe if one of these guys was a Dolphin, I would be less bullish on them than versus the other. And in Tyson's situation is just going to probably be the most interesting because even if he does slide a little bit, could that end up being a blessing in disguise, and so to speak? We just talked about all those teams that are picking at the front half of the draft that maybe aren't that great, but if you are a wide receiver too, attached to the 49ers, attached to Josh Allen, or you're going to the Eagles or the Chiefs with their second pick, or even the Patriots decide like they're not going to get this A.J. Brown deal through and they're taking a wide receiver with their pick, does that turn into a blessing in disguise for Tyson? Because Tyson, I do believe, offers the largest proof that we have, and I'd say large with it kind of air quotes because everyone's going to bring up all the missed time, but of playing all three wide receiver positions. Like we have an actual sample of him in college winning at all three wide receiver positions, whereas Tate and Lemon, you kind of have to project. And both of those guys I do project they have like inverse roles, can do the other role that they weren't asked to do in college. But Tyson, we've already seen it. Like he wins in man coverage, he wins at Z, he wins at X, and then he wins in the slot. So he's the most interesting guy to me, I believe. So if he ends up with higher draft capital, like I'll be a lot more bullish on him. But I think the industrial complex of the NFL is kind of dragging him too far this season. It feels a lot like what Justin Jefferson went through coming out of college, because this guy has just been dynamic anytime he's been on the football field. So he's the guy I'm definitely watching the most. I do believe that Lemon is entering the NFL at like the perfect intersection for his archetype. Like, I mean, when you look at these guys now in fantasy football that are wide receiver ones, it's these guys that look like Lemon versus our traditional X guys that we grew up with. It's no longer Julio Jones and Andre Johnson and AJ Green. Even last year, the top 12 scorers at the position, Puka Nacua, JSN, Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra, Rashee Rice, Pickens, London, Olave, Adams, Nico Collins, AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb. Like, they're outside of Pickens and Collins and AJ Brown, like, everyone else moves around and operates with versatility. The NFL has kind of shifted away from that 11 personnel boom that like added the slot archetype only as cutting into the wide receiver one production. And now teams have gotten rid of the kind of the slot only guy, and they're moving their lead wide receivers around. Like, you don't have to play 50% of your snaps in the slot. But we are moving guys in 25, 30%. Like, Zach Taylor, Jamar Chase's career is like the biggest definition of this. When he entered the NFL, he was just crushing dudes as a lid lifter. He is explosive. He's part of the reason why this Fangio shift has started to happen. Teams are like, we are playing two guys over top of him. You are not throwing 35-yard vertical shots to Jamar Chase. And Zach Taylor, although he's taken our lumps from us in the community, like as at least was smart to say, like, I want to keep getting Jamar Chase the football. I got to get him the football. And Jamar Chase started moving around. Obviously, they lose Tyler Boyd. And then they're like, we're not going to replace him with a pure slot only guy. We're just use Jamar Chase when we go to 11 personnel. He'll move into the slot. And we're seeing that more. So that's the question you have at Lemon, is they're just like, all right, is he going to be a slot only guy, or it can be a slot plus? And I definitely believe he can be a slot plus. He has a higher ADOT than like typical slot only guys. And I also think JSN's season last year was great for Lemon coming in the NFL. These are guys that almost have identical overlaps. 6'1", 196 pounds. Like, this is they have the same hand size, they have the same arm length. And the great thing about this kind of parallel too, because he always gets comped to Nacua and Amon-Ra, but those are day 3 picks. Like, we want actionable like guys we can compare him to. That's why I say we have this 3 years ago, we have this example of JSN, who was a slot only player at Ohio State, and through 2 years in the NFL, people considered him slot only still. He was stuck behind DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. He only played in 11 personnel. Those guys were gone. He was going to join that Clint Kubiak system, and a lot of gamers had questions like, can he win in this system? Can he win vertically? And guess what? Not only did he win, he had one of the most bonkers efficient seasons on one of the teams that had one of the lowest pass rates in the NFL. I believe he was only the 3rd player ever to lead the league in receiving yards on a team that was in the bottom 3rd of the league in pass rate. So I do think Lemon offers that upside, and JSN's first 2 seasons are kind of a litmus test to say, like, hey, even if he starts out slowly and they do have him play slot only to open up his career, there is an avenue for him to develop, year 2, year 3 as we move down the line.
Lemon also averaged 3.2 yards per route run when he was lined up from the boundary, which was better than JSN's collegiate career as well. Everyone forgets, I can't remember the exact number. Was it only 4 pass catches from out wide, 4 receptions? I feel like if I could just ask anyone off the top of my head, you would know that JSN had as a boundary receiver in college, but it was not. It was just basically no opportunity there at all. And then, as you said, he grew into one of the best wide receivers in the league. You talked about those two, though. Lemon being my personal favorite, just because, as I've mentioned on past shows, I just think, like we've seen in trying to learn our lessons with Lad McConkey and JSN. McConkey, who I got wrong, thinking he was strictly going to be a slot receiver as well. When you get that first round capital, I feel like teams now understand they use that investment. Thus, they will grow the player and keep him on the field no matter what. And I think that's what's going to happen with Lemon. Of course, there's some blemishes with that since he's exclusively a slot guy, but I believe he can do more and teams will see him as such. In that conversation, though, you did not talk about Carnell Tate. I know I've seen the stats, and now I want to direct everyone to Sharp Football and your analysis of Carnell Tate, because I believe you're coming at it from an angle and, have a profile that a lot of others aren't reaching and getting to right now.
Well, I'm definitely still like a believer in what Carnell Tate does well being translatable to the NFL. I mean, this is a guy that's active in the run game. He wins in the contested catch game. He wins down the field. He's one like the best like boundary operator in the NFL. Like all things that translate and then the teams are going to like. Obviously the question now, and we've done this with a lot of Ohio State guys, is just kind of like, all right, like, how much was the teammate impact, dragging down some of his production? Because Tate's production, even compared to like these other guys that we've given kind of a pass, is a lot lower than, Emeka Egbuka last year, JSN, who we talked about, who actually, JSN was on an Ohio State team and led the team in receiving yards that had, Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave on it. We have not seen like a ton of production from Carnell Tate. The efficiency's there under the underlying hood, but this is a guy that never hit 1,000 yards in his college season. He only averaged 3.1 career receptions per game against 14 games against career ranked opponents, 2.9 catches per game for 37 yards per game. We don't have a lot of guys with this profile that have been like outright smashes for fantasy football. And, to provide some context to that, like, when you look at wide receivers that have averaged over fewer than 4 receptions per game for their college careers, which I don't think is a make or break stat, it's just kind of like providing some kind of context here. Because I think a lot of people are treating Tate as like a can't miss prospect. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we have one of those here. But when you look at that group, we have a 34-player sample since 2000, and only 29% have delivered at least one wide receiver, one scoring season. 47% have failed to deliver even a wide receiver 3 or better season. Wow. 59% have failed to deliver even a wide receiver 2 or better season. The best guys on that list are all guys that have a little more dynamic quality than Tate had in college, like Odell Beckham, right? Like Odell Beckham's and Demaryius Thomas are the 2 linchpin guys that are in this group. And we just haven't seen that kind of explosiveness after the catch from Carnell Tate. And I don't know if he has it. The kind of guy that I think that's probably the most interesting for him in terms of comparables that are like hits, and there is like one big hit, and that's Roddy White, who he possesses some traits that I believe he can be comparable to like Roddy White. And then Javon Walker being the other guy who did win as like a lid lifter, kind of being appropriate comps for Tate. But that's not to tear down Tate. It's more of like, I believe that we've gotten to a state of where I believe he's going to be the wide receiver 1 drafted, and a lot of boards have him as the wide receiver 1. But in a typical year, like this guy probably wouldn't be the wide receiver 1. So I don't want to use that as like a can't miss prospect either. So like, and he also in the NFL, like if a team ends up throwing him out there and he's in kind of like this Alec Pierce type role that he was in college as a rookie, like that's tough for fantasy football in terms of consistency and having a player that you want to plug into your lineup week in and week out and have a sustainable floor with. So there is some when you look at these 3 guys, you can pull apart some of these guys. There's reasons to prop them up. It's what makes this pretty interesting. I think in a lot of leagues, we're going to see a lot of variance too, which makes this kind of fun. Like there won't be a clear wide receiver 1 taken in every rookie draft. There probably won't, like these guys will be shuffled up, and you might even have a gamer that loves Kevin Concepcion as much as one of these guys. So at least while this class maybe not is the most alluring class, we're at least going to have some shakeup in rookie drafts.
Would you be willing, because we've all had these conversations about our rookie drafts and how it's so hard right now to trade the 106, the 107, that flat tier that basically leaks into the third round, because everyone, all dynasty gamers are aware that of how flat that tier is. Would you be willing to come off the 102 through 104? So basically giving up one of these three wide receivers for a bounce back second year guy like a Teteroa McMillian or a Mecca Buka right now?
Yeah, I don't think you can get that though, but I would absolutely I would take Ibuka right now with with one proven year of NFL success over all these guys as a bet moving forward pretty easily. And then you're definitely not getting Tet for any of these picks. The real question will be kind of, what people are willing to sell the 101 for. And what you're willing to get. But yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to make picks though in this draft. Like everyone's telling you to trade your 2026 rookie picks, but nobody wants them. Right. Like we're going to be forced to make some picks, and especially if you have 105, 106 and later, you're going to have to step in and strap up. You got to make some picks.
Everyone's aware Jeremiah Smith is coming, and they're just trying to jostle around for next season. You already mentioned, though, Casey Concepcion, who leads off my next tier of wide receivers. So curious on your thoughts about him.
Yeah, and I came real close to even putting him in top tier. Like he's really close for me. Like I think you can make an arbitrage, a case where he could be arbitrage on Lemon, right? Because he's more of he's probably going to play more slot in the NFL than he did in college, but he already has a sample where he's won outside and he wins vertically downfield. Like you have to respect him winning downfield already, whereas like we still have to see kind of more proof of sample of that from Lemon. He looks a lot like Luther Burden was utilized last year, and now Luther Burden's everyone's favorite player coming into 2026. There's like an arms race who can rank Luther Burden higher, but that's the type of player I believe Concepcion is. It's like not really. He's the body of like a slot receiver, but like he is a vertical player. Like he wins downfield, and he's also like an awesome separator, and he wins at the line of scrimmage really well too. He had the one down year in like that weird season at NC State where they had the quarterback come in from Coastal Carolina, and then he had like 7 concussions in the first 3 weeks, and he was outgained by Justin Jolly in that year, who's in this class at tight end, who was liked as well. But then he went, goes to A&M. Just this is awesome this year. I mean, he was targeted on 27% of his routes. That was a wide receiver 10 in this class, 2.3 yards per team pass attempt, which is wide receiver 8. He was wide receiver 4 in this class and producing a first down or touchdown per route, which we love. Just an explosive player. So he's real close to me because I think what he brings to the NFL table is like, it's like, all right, well, we know he can move the slot if we need him to, but he offers the vertical component. So teams I believe are going to really like him, and he's the guy I do believe will end up probably having some fire to the smoke that's going around. Omar Cooper I still think is like a little bit more squint to see it in that secondary tier, and then like Denzel Boston, who's entering the NFL at a really tough time for his archetype. And it probably needs some vision in terms of coaching using him rationally.
Denzel Boston, as you said, being the old school 6'4", 212 guy that I think in previous years teams would say this is our wide receiver 1 that we just put on an island and let him go. But now, given the change in offensive schemes in the NFL, probably is a struggle. Even though I've seen his name come up in the first round quite often. And just to add to Concepcion, all the old school blueprints that we used to look at for fantasy before, our data grew on the back end, just that an elite punt returner as well. And not to mention mixing in some rushing production as a wide receiver too. So definitely love that outlook in those second wide receiver tier. After that, it does become questionable and subjective based on who you ask. So curious to hear your thoughts on who leads off your third tier of rookie wide receivers.
Yeah, and I go back and forth on Cooper and Denzel Boston like all the time, and I ended up edging out Cooper because I just think he fits what more teams in the NFL are structurally looking for. I mean, half the league is from the the McShanahan tree, the Shanahan, Sean McVay, and like that's the type of receiver that Omar Cooper fits into, like that system. Mm-hmm. he had that awesome catch that obviously everyone knows about that won the Penn State game, but he does struggle a little bit in the contested catch game and like playing big wide receiver for his even like his size, and he ended up testing a lot better I think than people thought too. But yards after the catch, demon in the run game, like these are like the coaches that are running all these systems are going to love him. I mean, he had the 5th highest run blocking grade of any receiver in college last year. Just awesome after the catch, creates his own yards. He played in that heavy RPO offense at Indiana that like really kind of asked him. But if you go back 2 years ago, he showed the explosive plays on his limited sample too as well. I mean, this is a guy who had 7 touchdowns on 28 catches in 2024, over 20 yards per catch. Like he can create those explosive after the catch like that system really wants. So I ended up still edging him out because I just think he fits what more teams are looking for in the modern NFL versus a Denzel Boston. And I think Denzel Boston offers more upside in terms of versatility than he's given credit for. But the problem for that is you need to have a coach that's willing to see that too. And we just don't see that. So because he's a worse prospect than Marvin Harrison Jr. and Tet McMillan were the previous 2 years. And both of those guys came into the NFL and immediately faced limitations for consistent fantasy production due to quarterback play, scheme, and the way they were deployed. I mean, these were guys that were stuck out at X wide receiver with quarterbacks that don't throw that menu of targets that archetype needs. So you need those things, I think, to line up for Denzel Boston. It's crazy. Like the one spot I think that makes the most sense for him is just to be a direct replacement for AJ Brown. Like if the Eagles are really going to trade AJ Brown, that would be the spot that fits the most, because Jalen Hurts, for all of his issues, like Jalen Hurts, like you don't want one of these guys that we talked about early outside of Carnell Tate to be with a guy like Jalen Hurts, right? Like guys that win on all these routes over the middle of the field with timing, right? Like Jalen Hurts is an old school, like he needs to see the throw to rip it. So he actually is a pretty good quarterback for like the old X archetype, because he'll throw you those 50-50 balls, those back shoulder balls. He wants to throw you hitches. They're going to run thus hitches this year, last year, but those are the plays that, you see the articles like on Jalen Hurts, and not to drag him, because I think Jalen Hurts is definitely a good enough quarterback to win with. We've seen it since college, and he's already has a Super Bowl and was the best player in the Super Bowl he lost. But he also is a restrictor plate on some of the things modern offenses are doing as well. So a guy like Denzel Boston, I think would work well for him. So if a coach is willing to use him in a capacity where he's going to play more power slot, that would be fantastic, because the small sample we have of Denzel Boston, playing in man coverage and getting to play in the slot, like he's smashed. That's the difference between him and Keon Coleman, right? Like he gets comped to Keon Coleman sometimes, but we knew all these things that were major red flags for Keon Coleman that don't exist for Denzel Boston. Denzel Boston, when he moved into the slot, again, it's a smaller sample, but 3.7 yards per route run. I almost called him Kevin Coleman, who's in this class, but Keon Coleman was awful against man coverage, awful when he moved the slot, didn't create anything after the catch. We have like a small sample of Denzel Boston even returning some punts. So it just all depends on, the vision of where he lands and like how you believe he's going to be utilized opening his career. Because you don't want to see him just thrown out in the same capacity we saw guys like Marvin Harrison Jr. and even Tet McMillan in year one, because he's just not as good as those players entering the NFL either.
And although Boston profiles as the direct AJ Brown replacement, you do actually see Omar Cooper's name flirted with more in mock drafts currently, being squeezed into the Eagles at the end of the first round, probably because of those strong run game tendencies you discussed when talking about his profile.
Boston is awesome in the run game too. I mean, obviously, if you're 6'4",
you can mow through some guys.
If you're 6'4", 220, and you played at Washington, who's was running the football after Ryan Grubb left, they had a true freshman quarterback start 2 years ago. It's like, yeah, you got to be active in the run game. So you are getting that out of Boston too. But all of the guys that we talked about that are going to play more boundary are, Cooper is going to be probably more of a hybrid guy. Mm-hmm. But they're all good in the run game. Tate's also really good in the run game.
Now, For the next tier, we do see some people jam in wide receivers based on what they believe their draft capital will be. This includes Bryce Lance, Jeremy Bernard, Zachariah Branch, which also, when I'm talking about those guys, it does seem to ignore their profiles and just say, this class is so questionable that now we're just latching on, for instance, in like best ball drafts, we're just latching on to the potential capital these guys will have in the second or third round. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on your third tier of guys based on their profiles.
Yeah, and in this draft class in general, when you incorporate, tight end and running back as well, I think fantasy gamers are going to play this draft probably arguably more through draft capital than any previous year. And we know that's going to lead to some trapdoors as well. You always do want to incorporate capital, but man, especially like the running back position, we've chased some draft capital running backs that have not paid off.
And it's a lot like last year where like I ended up with so much Egmeka, Buka, and Matthew Golden post-draft, despite not even liking Matthew Golden's profile, all because those guys were first-round receivers who were typically left over towards the end of the first round of rookie drafts because everyone instead went for the running backs. And I feel like that's kind of what's going to happen here is I'm just going to end up taking capital guys all because they're left over at the end of the first round.
Yeah, and you got to hope you don't get Jalen Polk or Jahan Dotson. If you got that, or Golden. I think Golden we have to have a lot more runway too in year two.
For sure.
But I mean, the one guy I can say that I'm just out on, at least from a fantasy football stance, that's going to have higher draft capital is Zachariah Branch. Like, there's just for fantasy football, like this type of player hitting has just been so incredibly thin. You look at him as a freshman, he had some production on a team that had Lemon and Jacoby Lane. But then afterwards, he was completely outplayed by both players, transfers to Georgia. He did have the best year of his career. He actually set a record for receptions at Georgia. But you look at the way he was utilized, just fed targets at the line of scrimmage. Even if you factor in the limitations that Gunnar Stockton has, Zachariah Branch only averaged 6.7 air yards per target at USC in 2024, 6.3 air yards per target in 2023 at USC. At USC, 40% of his targets were still screens. So it was only a 9% drop compared to Georgia. So it wasn't just Stockton and the Georgia thing. This is a guy that is just small. I mean, he's 5'9", he's 177 pounds, he has 29-inch arms, third percentile, he has 9-inch hands. He's just a small guy. And for his career, it shows up. He won 8 of 21 career contested catches. And that's not a be-all, end-all stat, but it's just like, it's when you have this profile and you don't win in contested catch, like, why am I going to believe when you don't have the size profile to win? Like, you're going to start winning those plays in the NFL. I think he's a tough guy, but you can be a tough guy and still be 177 pounds. Like, right. It's just tough, right? And the thing is too, like, when you look at the guys that have hit in this bucket, Tyreek Hill, Percy Harvin, before he started to suffer the migraine stuff, those guys also came with like a really strong rushing profile. And actually Branch, for as good as his return profile is, like, was never like utilized as like a runner in college, right? Even a guy like Kevontae Turpin had like a higher rushing profile, who's comparable, I think, to Zachariah Branch. Guys like Tavon Austin, Dexter McCluster, like, these guys it's just the margin for like cutting this and having like a fantasy difference maker is just too thin for me, where he's going to at least be probably a high second round rookie pick, because he's probably going to go on day 2 because of the explosives that a team will chase. So he's a guy that I'm not really as interested in from that bucket.
What about then the next group? Because I named a couple guys who people are jamming in based on just ADP right now, but I'm curious on some other names you're jamming into this third tier of players.
The two guys I think I'm the most interested in, one is Ted Hurst. And he's another guy that, obviously you've heard him come up. A lot of people like Ted Hurst. It's not like this is it reminds you like the Puka situation from a couple of years ago, where there's like, everyone's like, well, remember I called Puka? And it's like, well, yeah, a bunch of us like Puka Nacua. It's cool. We're all looking at the same stuff about it. But like, this is a guy, when you see these smaller schools, right? Like, you went to Georgia State, right? And you're just like, all right, what do we have here? Usually they're older prospects. Like Bryce Lance is an older prospect. It's Skylar Bell is an older prospect, but Ted Hurst is the 7th youngest wide receiver in this class. What's interesting, all those guys I mentioned also had NIL deals on the table to go to Power 4 conferences, and they all turned him down to stay where they. And I think it helped all of them staying. It's kind of interesting to see how guys will play this out, right? Like Skylar Bell takes that NIL deal to go to Michigan. He catches 40 passes with Underwood last year, and we're not even talking about him. But back to Ted Hurst. I mean, this guy's 6'4". He's just under 210. He's got 33-inch arms, 85th percentile physical profile score on my end, 83rd percentile, 40 score, 94th percentile explosion score. That's reinforces what you want. Because if I'm watching tape of you at Georgia State, you better look like the best dude on the field. Like, you just better. And he actually played that part. And he played with awful quarterback play, like you would expect Georgia State to have. 29% of his targets were uncatchable. It's the second highest rate in this class. Only Mekhi Lemon had a higher rate of missed tackles forced on receptions that had as many catches as Ted Hurst has. Like, he wins in the small game. You actually wish you would see him win in the size game a little bit more. That's something he still needs to develop. But he's really excellent after the catch. He can be a hybrid player in these offenses where he's just not like a true X. We have a lot of true X guys, like as you move down the lane, like Jacoby Lane, no pun intended there, Malachi Fields. Brazel's probably going to be an outside guy, but Ted Hurst does offer that hybrid type role. And even though he is a little bit older, I think Bryce Lance too he's going to surprise people where he goes. I could see this guy clearing his like mock draftable, like projected stuff, because NFL teams are going to help it. Remember Christian Watson? It's hard not to compare him to Christian Watson because of North Dakota State stuff. Christian Watson went 34 that year. And this is a guy that's 6'3", 204 pounds, ran a 4.34 40. And we can do all these things that are adjusted for size. 4.3 40 is 4.3. Like, we could say like, oh, this guy ran a 4.5 at 225 pounds and adjust for sheet score. You still a 4.5 still isn't faster than 4.3.
Yeah.
And
objectively, yeah.
Yes. And like a team, I don't think a team's gonna be able to help themselves. And this guy was more productive than Christian Watson was in college too. So I think he's going to have surprising draft capital when the chips are down because of his just profile and the lack of like tangible upside in this draft. The last guy I'll just touch on real quick before, because I got to get on these long-winded things, is that I don't really know is Chris Bell. And he's like a guy that's, I think, polarizing. Some people have him here too. He had one of like the best like 3-game samples a guy in this class has, right? Last year. He went on like a tear last year against Pitt. He had like 10 for 135. The next week he has like 12 for 170 against Virginia. And then he goes against Miami, who D'd up a lot of really good players last year. He had 9 for 136 and 2 touchdowns. That was a 3-week run. Obviously coming off the ACL injury. He's 6'2", 220 pounds. He's got huge mitts, 10-inch hands. Like, teams are going to like this profile. The problem is he didn't really play a lot of receiver. They just really, Louisville understood what they had him. They gave him just like a huge diet of like hitches, drags, and just like shallow crossers. They only threw him 4 passes behind the line of scrimmage, but like those shallow crossing routes were basically like almost like screen work to him. He gets comped to A.J. Brown a lot coming out of college because of the physical profile. But remember, A.J. Brown played with DK Metcalf and Van Jefferson and Elijah Moore, like NFL talent, and had 2,500 yards his final 2 seasons at Ole Miss. Chris Bell looks a lot like, and people are going to bristle at this, but like his career arc looks almost identical in physical profile to Quincy Enunwa coming out of Nebraska. Like, took him to like year 4 to kind of have some production. He's big and fast, can create after the catch, but like didn't have a lot of nuance as a wide receiver. Zachariah Branch, who we just talked about, had more catches over on throws 20 yards more downfield than Chris Bell last year. And he did, obviously he missed some time, but he's kind of a clunky guy for his size. He takes like a while to build up his speed, not really great in like breaks. So you worry about him in like the zone-based NFL. Like, is he going to create enough space, right? Like, I know teams can get him the ball after the catch and he's big and rugged, but I'm a little bit worried about him than I think more so the field. But I also think too, like the ACL injury probably helps him out in a sense to where he won't be overdrafted as well. So I can kind of I like 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Do you think we're going to lose a year of production, or do you think that he's going to slip in our rookie draft so much that perhaps it's probably still deemed as a value or we take him?
It just depends on basically how the NFL views it, right? Because if he ends up being like the wide receiver, say 7 through 9 taken in this draft. That probably means he was a top 75 pick, and then he just by default won't super slip. But when you look at his surgery date, he's right against 10 months at the start of the season. So like that's kind of right on pace. He had a surgery December 10th, so it'd be right around 10 months at the start of the NFL season. We always think about rookies too, especially if you're not a day one pick in the first round. You're probably going to be a back half of the year producer anyway. So I'm not necessarily torn on it. I think he'll probably be on a field. The thing is, he's going to miss probably a lot of the install, the summer stuff. He's going to miss.
Yeah.
So that's what probably puts him behind the start of the year.
Reminiscent of even Luther Burden, who missed a majority, basically all of last year's spring camp and reporting with veterans, and then really didn't touch the field until the end of the year.
That's probably what we'll have, something along those lines.
That's why I'm a little bit worried. But again, we could still be getting him at his discount. You also already talked about Bryce Lance, who, as you said, not only profiles like Christian Watson, but also last year, 30% of his targets came 20 yards downfield. So plays a lot like Christian Watson with that high ADOT we love as well. The only two other guys that I think usually get put into this tier are one, Jeremy Bernard, and two, for me, Jacoby Lane. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on those two individuals.
Yeah, Jeremy Bernard is a player that's just going to be a glue guy, right? Like he's just going to be a guy that we look back and he probably is going to play, 8 to 12 years in the NFL. Maybe has like a year where he falls into a target tree where he's getting a lot of targets, gives you maybe like a wide receiver 2+ season, but he's going to be one of these guys I think that's going to be more of like a fantasy, like bench guy on your roster, like a dynasty wide receiver 4 or 5 type. He is another one of these guys. He does play. He does a little bit of everything. He plays all positions. He has that rushing profile we talked about too. He rushed 36 times for 5 touchdowns over his career in college. He started as a freshman at Washington State on a team that had Keon Coleman and Jaden Reed. He then transferred to Washington on a team that had Roma Dunze, Jalen McMillan, and Jalen Polk. And he actually had more receptions that year than Denzel Boston on that group. He left after Ryan Grubb left. He left Washington for Bama. He started off the season on fire. His splits went with Ty Simpson's splits. The front year, like that's what happened to Jeremy Bernard. I think he scored 2 touchdowns over like the final 8 games of the season. So 27% of his targets were off target. That was the 3rd highest rate in this class. The Ty Simpson stuff showed up with him in his profile. He's a guy I don't think is going to break the bank, but he's just be like a solid glue guy on your roster. It's going to get him drafted. He's not a guy that's like you're going to be like, oh, it's amazing I got Jeremy Bernard, but he's just going to be a guy that's going to be on rosters for a long time.
Any thoughts on Lane as well?
Yeah, and Lane's just like that. We talk about that prototypical X. He's entering the NFL at a time where like that position's being a little bit devalued. So he ran faster than I thought he would. You don't really see, 4.48 when you watch him. He's not a guy that creates a lot after the catch, but he does have a strong catalog of, winning these contested catches. He also drew the most pass interferences in college football last year. So you're getting that for you. This is like the type of player you're getting, like that George Pickett, early career George Pickens. And you hope that he can run into a season where like he can get a lot of those other targets and be allowed to run a different, route tree. But I do think he's probably going to be a guy that is a lot more in that Alec Pierce type role where we're going to play a lot of more of that better in a best ball archetype, so to speak.
After that is where we really start questioning who's going to latch on day 3 here. A lot of the names that are mentioned are Antonio Williams and Brennan Thompson and Malachi Fields, Chris Brazzell as well. Malachi Fields, who did get some early first-round buzz, but I believe has since dropped then. So does anyone stand out in what I believe is now the 4th tier of wide receivers we're talking about? So a couple players that you believe you're going to be higher on, at least in rookie drafts, pre-draft, until we see their capital.
Yeah, Antonio Williams for sure is a guy I'll be interested in to see where he goes, see if he completely falls into day 3, or maybe he even could slide into back 2. I mean, this is a guy that had an early career breakout. When you look at he profiles very similarly when you line all these guys up to a Mekhi Lemon, a Casey Concepcion, and a Skylar Bell. And like all those guys have way more steam than him because, he's coming off this year where he was hurt and Clayton Klubnik was not very good. But even when he still played last year, was a guy that still commanded a lot of targets and was productive. I mean, this guy has over 200 career receptions. Like I said, the early career breakout. He also rushed 25 times in college. Does he end up being a slot only guy like a Josh? He could get like Josh Downs very easily though, and that could be like the problem, because if he's only playing 11 personnel, then he's just not on the field. But he's a guy I'm definitely interested in, because when he played out wide, he was good. In 2024, he actually played 41% of his snaps out wide, which overlaps his best college season as well, and Klubnik's best college season. So I do think if he's given a chance there, he can be more productive. You're just worried about like the Josh Downs factor, because we all love Josh Downs, loved him as a prospect. It's just that he's been roadblocked so far because he's played 33 career snaps in 3 years in the NFL and 1 to 2 wide receiver sets. You don't want that to have happen to him. The one guy we did kind of skip over that is probably going to be drafted as Elijah Surratt. We did skip over him. This is a guy, tons of production, following, Kirk Cignetti from James Madison to Indiana. 56% of his targets were first down or touchdown. The second of guys, he's a red zone maven, wins in that contested catch game, big body, 6'2", 210. The question you have with him is just like, what do we have in terms of earning targets downfield and then creating after the catch? Like, we didn't really see any of that from him. He's a very Michael Pittman-esque profile. Like, the range of outcomes are being like Michael Pittman or like Terrace Marshall, right? And that's like a worrisome archetype. But if I told you were going to get Michael Pittman side of it, you would be like, all right, I'll take that as a round 2 rookie pick, like 100% of the time. But yeah, he's kind of the one guy we glossed over in that area. Brazel, I just don't know what to do with, right? And I hate to throw my hands in the air with these Tennessee wide receivers, but
it's fair though.
I mean, it's just so hard. These Josh Heupel systems, like the most successful receiver he's had coming to the NFL is Gabe Davis, man. I mean, from Cedric Tillman to Jalen Hyatt to Dante Thornton, like these guys just aren't asked to do things in college that they're going to be asked to do in the NFL, because it's a system utilized to exploit the wide hashes in college football. Brazel played 93% of his snaps out wide. And we say out wide, it's not just him like lining up as outside wide receiver on the ball. Like, he's like 3 yards from the sideline, like 16% of his targets are 16 air yards per target. Like, it's just the 4th highest. Like, he doesn't have like a sample of like what wide receivers going to be asked to in the NFL. So he takes that projection. But again, some team's going to do it, right? 6'4", you run a 4.37 40. We talked about this with Lance. Like, a team's just going to draft you based on that. So he'll probably have the draft capital and a chance to win there. I just have no idea to identify these guys. The TCU guys are in a similar bucket. Like Eric McAllister, maybe will be undrafted because of his off-field stuff, but he's a very interesting guy too, in the same bucket of guys. It's just that he comes with that the baggage that a team's going to take on.
McAllister also finished top 5 in this class in yards per route run against man coverage, which no idea if it's sticky, but I still like to know my receivers can be one-on-one comfortably whenever they transition to the next level. And you mentioned Antonio Williams, someone I also like a lot. Like, there are, for instance, I don't know how deep you've been in the best ball streets right now, but Jack Besh is getting drafted over Antonio Williams. And it's like, why would I ever make that bet when I could just bet on Antonio Williams instead of a rookie who already saw can't earn targets and is with an entirely different regime now as well. So Antonio Williams, I think, is a guy that you can invest in currently. And that's where I want to lead this next question for you is, through everyone we've talked about, are there other players that we haven't mentioned that you think are good, like not only last round best ball picks, but someone you're monitoring going to the day 3? Because even if they get drafted in the round 6 or 7, they can still stand out due to their profile.
Well, not drafted in round 6 or 7, but we kind of just like gloss. So we brought his name up in a few guys. Skylar Bell, I think is a really solid player. He's another one of those guys that could end up getting archetyped to slot only. So you got to kind of see where he lands. I think like a median outcome is probably like something like a Khalil Shakir type player. And then you hope that there's potentially more, and he could be arbitrage in some of these higher end picks that kind of have similar profiles than him. Like I said, he had an offer to go to Michigan last year, ended up staying, worked out well for him. I'm trying to think like down the line, like who are we throwing darts at? McAllister is my favorite dart throw guy, just because of the only thing dragging him down. Like, I believe he would be talked about even ahead of guys like Brazel and Lance if he just didn't have the off-field stuff. And we know the NFL is going to count that stuff against him. I understand it. But if he ends up being drafted at all, I'm going to be there. I mean, if he ends up just being drafted at all, I'm at least going to throw some, late, third round rookie picks, fourth round rookie picks on him, just because he's a guy that, has that profile that we look for and has that explosiveness, especially after the catch. Because, a lot of the times when you have these like high A-dot guys, they're not, after the catch creators. So when they are asked to do some stuff in the NFL, like winning against all the zone coverage we're seeing, they can't do it, right? And that's like my worry with Jacoby Lane, right? Like this is just like, I don't know how he gets out of like this just true X archetype kind of role. But none of the other guys like really kind of excite me down there. I know Brennan Thompson gets some steam, but like he's just a guy I don't think is big enough and offers that kind of full field upside. He looks like JJ Nelson to me. You remember JJ Nelson from the Cardinals? He's just too small, 5'9", 164 pounds. Granted, if you're gonna be that small, you better be fast. He ran 4.26. I get it. Like it's like I said, that's why I bring up the comps for him. Kevin Coleman and Eric Rivers are two guys I'm at least interested in at the end of the draft. Kevin Coleman had an awesome season, over 2.5 yards per out run in his second season. Eric Rivers had an awesome 2024 at Florida International before he just went and played, with Haynes King and that Georgia Tech limited passing offense. He's another guy that isn't really strong athletic profile, but probably ends up being just too small, sub 180. So at least looking at those guys, but no one else like down at the bottom of the pile here like really stands out. I'm just kind of just keeping the lights on for some of those guys.
That's why I feel like today, 45 minutes in, we've only touched on the wide receivers we're monitoring, but also I'm going to bring you back just like last year for our post NFL draft, rookie draft, and here in about 3.5 weeks. And then we can dive into even more of these guys once we know their capital. Since again, we're leaving the lights on, but this class as a whole, very questionable right now. And we're really just crossing our fingers that we get those landing spots.
And it's really getting propped up too, because the running back position is so poor this year that it feels like more gamers are taking a glass half full approach with these wide receivers, because we got to get something from somewhere, right? Like,
this, like I talked about the third tier of wide receivers being subjective based on who you ask. The second tier, so basically every running back after Jeremiah Love, completely different based on who you asked as well. Like I was talking on the last episode, everyone can go back and listen to with Dwayne McFarland, where we actually have the same second tier in Jonah Coleman and Emmett Johnson. His actually extends a little bit further, but basically this class is so questionable at that position that we're just taking, the Breece Hall archetypes. We're taking the receiving guys and we're saying, what if I just put you here and we draft you and we cross our fingers? That's literally what's happening. Before you go, actually, I know you came out lower than consensus on Jadarian Price. And so curious to get your thoughts on Price in particular.
Yeah, I did. And, obviously there's maybe a path for Jadarian Price to, end up being like a Jahmyr Gibbs, Devon Achane type of player in terms of explosives, right? And, people will talk about like the explosive run rate, that, and a lot of that came, as an ancillary player to Jeremiah Love, doing a lot of cleanup work against light boxes. The things that I worry about with Jadarian Price is that he's just small and doesn't have like an NFL size sample of touches, which has been kind of a tough road to track, right? Like we don't have very many examples of guys with fewer than 300 career touches that go as top 100 picks. It's guys like CJ Prosise, Jonathan Brooks, who was in a similar boat behind Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson in his career, Justin Fargas at USC, Alex Green at Hawaii, right? Chris Henry, running back Chris Henry at Arizona. My closest comp for him, comparable, would be Kenyon Drake when he was behind Heisman winner Derrick Henry. Kenyon Drake only had 279, career touches at college. Jadarian Price 295. That's kind of what you're hoping. Kenyon Drake gave us a couple of years of production, 3 top 20 seasons. You would take that, I think, out of anyone from this class at running back at this point. So you have that, but he's only 200 pounds. It's a very limited sample, but this is one of the worst pass protectors in the class. And if you're 200 pounds and you can't pass block, it's a problem for your playing time. And TreVeyon Henderson, we just lived this, where everyone told you TreVeyon Henderson was a good pass blocker coming out of college. But the problem with TreVeyon Henderson was he was 200 pounds too. Like you get asked to pass block in the NFL where you're picking up 250-pound linebackers. Like the 200-pound guy is just not going to win that. He's not going to win that battle. You remember in season last year, like we all love Jahmyr Gibbs. I think it was week 8 or week 9. It was the first Lions-Vikings game. And the previous 2 years playing a complementary role with David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs gave Brian Flores a ton of issues. And at that point in last year, Jahmyr Gibbs had overtaken David Montgomery and was playing, career high snap shares, and he was really kind of being the driver of the backfield again. And Brian Flores said, if you're going to put Jahmyr Gibbs on the field this much, I'm going to make him pass block. I'm not going to let him do anything else. And he just sent mid blitz after mid blitz to the point where Dan Campbell came out after the game. It was the most pass blocks a running back had in like 10 years. And Jahmyr Gibbs just got walked the whole game to the point where Dan Campbell came out after the game and apologized to Jahmyr Gibbs, publicly in his press conference. And like, it's just hard as a 200-pound guy if you can't pass protect and contribute in the pass game. So we don't know if he can win as a pass catcher either, because we just didn't see it in college. He had 15 career college catches. So if those are the limitations for him, because Achane and Gibbs got on the field because of that role early on in their careers, he's going to have to generate a significant amount of explosives. So just a little bit of worry there versus some of the other guys in this class that I think are bigger, have more production, and just offer, I think, a little more insulation. But I totally understand the people shooting for the moon of Jarian Price. My top-down advice this year has been the RB2 in this class should not be a first-round rookie pick, and they're going to be. Just don't be that gamer that is doing it. Like, I don't think any of these guys should be round 1 rookie picks, but because of draft capital or landing spot, someone will be there. But I mean, we have so many examples of these high-end rookie picks going day 2, day 3 to a spot we believe is good that just haven't worked out. I mean, Caleb Johnson last year, Trey Benson looks like he's dead. Looks like he's cooked right now. Guys like Keyshawn Vaughn, right, amongst us. Like, we have to even see, like, RJ Harvey got all that bump last year. And, like, gamers that even have RJ Harvey are like, it was okay what we got, but, like, man, I don't feel great. Like, I still don't feel great right now with what I have.
Even someone like who stood out even more, like a Bucky Irving. Like, you definitely don't feel great with Bucky Irving right now either.
And Bucky Irving was a round 3 rookie pick.
Yeah.
Like, one of these guys, maybe 2 of these guys are going to end up as like pick 108 to 112 in rookie drafts.
Yeah.
I just don't want to be the gamer making that bet based on draft capital.
One final question before I let you go, because I know you're in the streets making trades in your own dynasty leagues right now. Is there someone this offseason, whether it be a second-year bounce back, just someone you could get lower right now, is there a particular player you've been trying to acquire in your leagues, thinking that his stock is at its lowest point currently?
I'm a believer in what the bounce back for DJ Moore. I can believe his redraft. I can't believe his redraft ADP is still kind of hanging around, because maybe just because his whole career we've kind of done it with DJ Moore and people are like done chasing the ghost. But or imagine saying you're still getting a player still with like meat on the bone, like going to play with Josh Allen, and people are like, I'm not that interested, man. Because as much as Caleb Williams made a jump in terms of like splash plays and even some fantasy points last year, like this was still a pretty inaccurate quarterback, especially in year 2. And you look at DJ Moore, it's like inaccurate target rate the past 2 years, just under 20%. He's going to a guy, Josh Allen, that is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and he's on a wide open like target tree. I also think that the Bills could be a sneaky team to throw more. I mean, obviously we don't know the full truth, but like, remember, who was the coordinator that Joe Brady took over? Why is it eluding me? It's Ken Dorsey. Ken Dorsey was fired because he was throwing too much. So was part of Joe Brady being so run heavy, not just because of what they had at wide receiver and Josh Allen? Was part of it driven by Sean McDermott? I'm curious to see. Also, the Buffalo defense is significantly worse than like where it was at their apex. So they could be playing in some more shootouts. I am definitely, what's funny is, DJ Moore left the Bears, and I actually believe he's a better fantasy player for 2026 than the other 2 guys left over. And obviously there's an arms race for Luther Burden, like I said, but I think DJ Moore outscores both Bears next year.
Wow. As I noted this on Twitter as well, similar to what you just said, that yes, last year Caleb Williams 40th in catchable pass rate, just because we know he unlike a lot of quarterbacks views third and long as a punt because basically you're already punting on third and long. And so he purposely is inaccurate in that he extends plays and launches it downfield only to where his receivers can catch it and not be a turnover. But yes, 40th in catchable pass rate as opposed to Josh Allen, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, who was fourth in an accurate pass rate last year, as in one of the most accurate quarterbacks. So, yeah, I think DJ Moore just getting the bump in opportunity and not having to compete for targets around guys like Luther Burden, Colston Loveland as well this year is a
I would
great.
easily trade any of those picks we just talked about, like 108 or later, easily for DJ Moore.
And that's very accessible. That's kind of like how I view now. He's obviously not as cheap as DJ Moore, but Emeka Buka is kind of my answer, just because we saw the Jeremy Bernard splits where Buka scorched the world in the first half of the year and then just dropped immensely those last 2 months. I think due to his own injuries, I think due to a rookie wall, I think due to Baker Mayfield's injuries, but overall, we can at least attribute the way he fell due to the surrounding situations and buy back in for this offseason. Rich Hribar, tell everyone where they can find the rest of your work at Sharp Football.
Yeah, I wrote up every single, rookie in this draft. You can find all the profiles over at Sharp Football. You can check those out. I've got early season projections up, early season rankings. So you can check out to see who I'm actually higher on versus some the ADP that's out there now. And then once we get these rookie landing spots, all those guys will go into those projections and we'll have more of a cleaner landscape of where we're looking at 2026 football playing out. Always blessed to come on and talk to you, my friends. I love everything you guys are doing at ETR. I have a great relationship with everyone over there at the site. I'm happy for everyone. I'm happy that everyone is just excited for football again.
We are. It's that time of the year where we're talking about it, and it won't be the end of it because, again, I'll be bringing you back on for a post-draft rookie draft once the dust has settled from those 7 rounds. So thanks, Rich, for joining. And until next week when we do this again about quarterbacks and other positions, be a little bit kinder than what's required.